what I found is that if you take the time to explain the difference to your customers between levels of vendor, material, subcontractor, whatever it is, if you really take the time to explain to them, this is what you get for this price, this is what you get for another price, this is what I recommend, I wouldn't do it this way. At the very least, you're setting the expectation with the customer, so that if they're like, "Yep, I gotta save money, go with the cheaper option," at least you've already explained to them like what they're getting, and you're setting the expectation for, that finish isn't going to be quite as nice as this other one. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Your Project Shepherd podcast. I am your host, Curtis Lawson, and I'm here for another solo episode where you just get to listen to me all by myself without the pleasure of having an interruption of somebody else. Anyway, last episode that I did solo, I talked about sunk cost fallacy, and then kind of toward the end of that, I got into talking about subcontractors and employees, and how sometimes we just kind of stick with the subcontractor even after we should have moved on. So that kind of got me thinking about doing a whole nother episode basically about having the right subcontractor for the job, for where you're at and your kind of your level, your path as a builder. Because I think a lot of the times we as builders, we get somebody that we like to use, and we stick with them maybe beyond when we should have maybe moved on and kind of upped our game with somebody else. So I think this is really important, because you're only as good as your worst subcontractor. Just like in sports, I'm sure that you've heard the analogy, sports team is only as good as their weakest player. And this is absolutely the same when it comes to construction. Having a bad carpenter or a bad drywall guy can make your finished product look awful. Having a bad foundation guy or bad framer, that just instantly affects everybody that comes after them. So you're starting off with bad trades, you're going to end with a bad product, or everyone else after that is going to spend all their time just trying to kind of cheat things and make things work and look good, even when you're just not starting with a good base for them to work off of. So, there's a really big difference between a experienced high-end builder that has really appropriate high-end trades and a guy who just kind of wants to be a high-end builder, but he's trying to accomplish that using cheaper trades, cheaper subcontractors and vendors, and he never quite gets there. So here's what I see happening, kind of two situations here. Number one, and I think this is probably the most common, the level of the subcontractor or the vendor doesn't grow with the builder. So, and I did this too, builders generally start small. Most companies start small, right? Most builders start with small projects. And I think a lot of remodelers especially kind of start in the world of, we're going to do small jobs, maybe siding, paint, and you move into doing baths, kitchens, whole houses, and then eventually you're doing additions. Then maybe one day you're like, I want to try to build a new house. So we start small, maybe cheaper new construction, and then we kind of move up the ladder until we're doing better and better, bigger and bigger levels of projects. So it's kind of a natural progression, right? But when you're small and starting out, and you're trying to keep your budgets down, you're trying to get those first few jobs, you want your prices to be low. It's common. And so you're generally using subcontractors who are kind of one-man operations, guy working out of his truck. You're probably working out of your truck at that point too. And so you're using these small guys to keep your prices down. And a lot of those guys are fine for what they're doing. I've never been one to knock somebody who's doing that type of work, because there's an appropriate level of sub, there's an appropriate level of everything, right? Not all the expensive guys are a good fit for small projects. So anyway, builders will start with the cheaper subs, may be fine for what they're doing at the time. As they grow, they tend to hold on to those relationships, and a lot of times that guy who is doing your painting, your carpenter, your tile work on that little small remodel job just isn't capable of pulling off those larger scale projects, whether it's the size of the project and he doesn't have the manpower to handle a project that size, or whether it's as houses get bigger and more expensive, the designs get more complex. He doesn't have the knowledge base to execute that. And so when you're as guys grow and they're doing these bigger and bigger projects, they're sticking with these guys, and they start to get complaints for customers. This is not what I expected. This isn't the level of finish that I signed up for. But the builder maybe doesn't know any better. Either he doesn't personally know how to teach, how to coach that subcontractor to get where they need to be, because he doesn't personally know how to do it. So, and this is another common theme, people just trust their subcontractors to do what they're supposed to do. They don't have the knowledge to coach, bring up those people. So they're kind of relying on their trades. Again, you're only as good as your worst trade on the project. So anyway, as companies grow, they're sticking with these guys, and subcontractors hate to tell you they can't do something. I don't know how many times I've heard, oh yeah, my brother can do that. My cousin can do that. I can do that. I did that last week for somebody else, right? I hear this all the time where the guy's like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. But he doesn't really know how to do it either. He doesn't know how to do that either. Just like, maybe the contractor doesn't know what he's doing either. So everyone's kind of like talking themselves up, but they've never done it. They're not quite capable of doing it, but they believe they can do it. So anyway, these subcontractors will like tell you, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And again, if it's something that you're not personally familiar with, if you don't know how that works, you're really just at their mercy, and you're kind of crossing your fingers and just hoping that they can pull that off. Now, I'm not saying that all subcontractors are going to be kind of stuck like that. I've got several guys who have been with me for a long, long time who grew and learned as I did. I've got an electrician that's been with me for, 12 years, and he started off as a 1 or 2 man operation, do my small projects, and now he has a very large crew executing some very high-end projects. So he's been a great resource. He's grown with me. I have a countertop fabricator that I've been using for, oh gosh, he was probably the first countertop fabricator that I ever used when I started remodeling in 2004. And he's grown with me too. Like, he has gone from basically fabricating countertops out of his truck to having a full shop with a CNC set up, and he's fantastic. So not all subcontractors are kind of stuck like at a certain level like this, just like not all builders are stuck at a certain level. But those guys have invested their time in training, they've invested their money in equipment, and you can tell the difference between those guys who are wanting to grow with you and those guys who are kind of stuck where they're going to be. So my advice there is, as you grow, as you take on bigger projects, you've got to find these subcontractors who are capable of moving up with you. So, all right. So that was situation number one. A guy who just has subs that kind of are stuck at a certain level, right? Here's situation number two. A builder is trying to keep a budget down for the client. And so something has to be sacrificed to get that budget down, right? The client's like, man, I got a $1 million budget, and you're at 1.2. What can we do to get that price down? Or maybe you're competing against another builder, and you feel like you've got to be a little bit cheaper, right? And so something has to be sacrificed at that point. So very commonly, they will just, if they're bidding that out to 2 or 3 subs, they'll pick the cheaper sub. Maybe they'll try somebody new they haven't used before just to get that price down. And they think that maybe that sub is just good enough to get it done. But the question is, what is the customer expecting? If that customer is spending a lot of money, if they're spending $1 million, $2 million, I mean, even if they're spending, if it's a kitchen remodel and they're spending $100,000, $200,000 on a kitchen remodel, they probably have a level of expectation for what that's going to look like. And, is that subcontractor actually capable of pulling that off for that price? So it's not just the level of finish, right? So it's not just a painter who can execute a fine finish, or a tile guy who can make really straight joints. A lot of times it's something that can really hurt you later. And, finishes, things like that, that might hurt you now because you have to go back and redo it or fix it or have somebody unhappy with a finish. But the real danger is when you hire a trade like a mason or a framer or a roofer or somebody that's doing something structurally or something that's going to be related to the building envelope, stuff that goes into the realm of building science. So those kinds of problems, if you got a problem with your insulation, your air conditioning, your wall system, that's the kind of stuff that you don't find out about for a couple of years, maybe until there's a real problem and there's like black stuff growing in the walls, and you're in a lawsuit. So, what I found is that if you take the time to explain the difference to your customers between levels of vendor, material, subcontractor, whatever it is, if you really take the time to explain to them, this is what you get for this price, this is what you get for another price, this is what I recommend, I wouldn't do it this way. At the very least, you're setting the expectation with the customer, so that if they're like, "Yep, I got to save money, go with the cheaper option," at least you've already explained to them like what they're getting, and you're setting the expectation for, that finish isn't going to be quite as nice as this other one, or you may have some water issues if you go that route, right? So you're setting an expectation for finish. You're also setting an expectation for performance. And I think that helps, protect relationships. It can also just kind of help protect you in the future on a legal basis. If you have a record of that client, choosing that particular product, finish, whatever it is, you can kind of go back and say, you got what you paid for, but I offered you a better option. You chose to do something else. A smarter way, the way that I prefer, is you just don't even give them that option of that cheaper stuff. Like, you explain to them, we do it at this level, and this is the reason that we do it at this level. If you like, I won't do it at that lower level because I've seen what happens at that price point. So, consumer education just goes a long way on that kind of stuff. And if they don't want to spend more, if they want to hire the cheaper guy to do it, then maybe you dodged a bullet on that. Not every job is the right fit for every builder, but I do feel that it's our job as professional builders to educate people on these different levels of things and what they're getting. It's also our job as professional builders to have subcontractors who are capable, tradespeople who are capable, vendors who are providing the products that are capable of creating the experience, the end product that the homeowner is expecting. So a big part of what we do is just setting expectations. And actually, that's another great topic for the next episode. I might think on that here for a few days and do a whole nother one of these about customer expectations, because it's so important. Like, setting expectations and defining exactly what it is that you're providing the client is essential, because if they're expecting this level up here and you're delivering something down here, there's going to be disappointment, there's going to be conflict. So it's setting expectations, but it's also defining in your contracts and your scope documents exactly what it is that you're going to deliver. So I actually did I'm pretty sure on one of the previous episodes I did this example. And I've used this example before in teaching people about writing scopes of work. But you can, a set of drawings that has just a bathroom, for example, just a little powder bath that's like 5 feet, 8 feet long by 4 feet wide, let's say, 32 square feet. That little small bathroom, just drawn on paper on an architect's plans, it's got a sink and it's got a toilet. Maybe it's got a cabinet, maybe not. Maybe it's just a pedestal sink. I don't know. But it's just this basic two-dimensional line drawing. And so the expectation in your mind might be, hey, we're putting a cabinet, a sink, a faucet, and a toilet and a light, and we're calling it a mirror. We're calling it a day, right? But when the customer sees that, or when the designer sees that, they have this whole other mental picture of what they're going to be receiving. So it's really important that everyone's in alignment on what's being provided. So they're not expecting wallpaper and a wall-mounted faucet and an antique mirror and $1,000 toilet and whereas you're expecting basic finishes. So that's a big area of conflict, or it can be. So setting expectations, having the right trades to execute what the expectations are, and having everybody on the same page and having things well defined in your contract can help head off a lot of headaches as you go through the construction process. So again, that'll be a whole nother episode that I do, I think, because I like that topic a lot. But yeah, I think that's all for today. I hope you found this discussion helpful about hiring the right subs and setting expectations on what they're capable of executing. So I hope you enjoyed these solo episodes. I enjoy doing them. And join me next time. We'll do it again. Thanks.